Women over 50 is a $15 trillion industry.
It's so easy for predatory marketing to get in there and start selling you stuff.
Marketing smart, they said, this area, they're going through something. The science hasn't caught up because it's not being well funded. There's this blank space. We can fill it.
So many midlife women, they're being misled about what it is they're taking because they're getting pummeled relentlessly by this story that their bodies are broken. And so they're not even looking at the big levers.
That's where we have to bring the evidence in so you do the best thing for yourself when you have the ability to look inward.
Hi, welcome to Stronger by Design. I'm your host, Michelle MacDonald. Today's guest is Dr. Sarah Berg. Women in midlife are finally being talked to by the wellness industry, which is absolutely great. But the question is, are we being helped or are we being sold, right? Fear with prettier packaging, right? And we're seeing that in the aisles now in the grocery store, like all the stuff that we're supposed to buy. How do we survive without it? And does it work or does it not? So my guest is Sarah. She is the founder of Selfority, contributor to Unbiased Science podcast, and I highly recommend you guys, if you're interested in this kind of information, go check that out. Incredible advocate for evidence-based communication around women's health, and someone who's willing to challenge very profitable narratives in menopause and wellness culture. And we need voices like that. So let's go in and talk about the menopause industry explosion. Why has the menopause boom suddenly become such a massive business opportunity?
Well, it's because we're not getting much information about it. We aren't getting much medical data. We know women's health. We know we're not being the ones funded. And so there's this empty gap, and people are frustrated. They're tired of feeling this way. They don't feel like they have to feel this way. And so the industry said, hey, these women hold the purse strings in their family. They have great financial ability to fund. So let's sell them something. I mean, and it's that simple. Right now, women over 50 is a $15 trillion industry. $15 trillion.
$1 trillion. That's a huge number.
In the United States alone. And we hold 94% of our household purse strings. So we hold the money that goes out. So we can make those decisions. So they're smart, marketing smart. They said, this area, they're going through something. The science hasn't caught up because it's not being well funded. There's this blank space. We can fill it, and it's brilliant. And they're doing it because we're such a powerful base. And so women get this thing, they're like, oh, they think we're gullible. Oh, they think we can be sold to. But it's the opposite. We are so powerful that they think this is where our money needs to go because they can pay for it. And that says something.
Yeah, it says something. I used to say to my clients, like, be careful. I said this 2 years ago before the boom really was booming, and I was starting to see stuff percolate into my own ecosystem. And I said to my clients and also my coaches, like, we're going to watch this space. And it's actually one of the reasons I started the podcast, because I wanted to be a safe haven for evidence-based information for women that really wanted to optimize themselves, because I'm like, we have a target on our backs. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it's thousands of women. You might know, Sarah, thousands of women in the US alone enter menopause every single day. That is a recurring, replenishing market. There's a need. They're not being addressed. And there's loopholes in legislation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So get in there. And also we're really, maybe more so than men, I'm not sure about that, but maybe more susceptible to girlfriend marketing. Right. So that influencer who convinces you that she's on your side, and she's had her own personal journey and experience, and she wants to share that with you. Just like, say, I don't know, like lean legs 50, and you'll get the PDF and all that. And then she's going to sell you on the back end.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that. Lean legs 50. That's always what it is. Something, what is it now? TikTok skinny but basically the idea of skinny or thin or lean are always the words that are being targeted to us as women. And that's also
Mm.
that's a whole different story that needs to be unpacked. And I know you have probably wrestled this so many times, but yes, we are. I call it also the group text.
Yeah.
They know they can catch
Nice.
us because we have like group texts of 10 or 15 people, and we're self-promoting marketers. We might as well be MLMs because we have something that maybe we heard from a girlfriend work for them. We bring it to our group chat and we're marketing for them. So it's so many levels of this. It's not just the Instagram, social media, someone, it's more intimate. It's someone you actually know saying, oh, yeah, it's someone that I know that this worked for, no matter if it did or not. And it's that underground marketing as well. That's so easy for them.
So we know that menopause, I love this conversation. So we know that menopause is literally like it is a tens of billions of dollars waiting to be tapped into. And we know that the industry has identified midlife women as a premium, right, consumer
Mhm.
demographic. We also, I want to say this, like women investing in themselves is not a weakness.
N
One of the stories I like to tell my clients is, listen, why is natural better than something that has human intervention, right? If you go look at the botanical gardens, or you walk in a neighborhood and you see somebody that's invested in their house, they've got their trees pruned and the flowers planted, is that worse than a house that's been left to go to nature, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not always that human intervention is worse than natural, but right, we also want to be strategic. We want to make informed decisions.
Mhm.
We want to make sure we're not doing ourselves harm, especially when we don't know long-term consequences of things or how drug interactions might be happening in the long run. So, can we talk about that nuance, right? Like, we
Yeah.
want to invest in ourselves. We don't want to just let ourselves go and age naturally. I know a lot of the women that listen to my podcast, they're interested in optimizing, but they also want to navigate those landmines where they're just being sold crap. How do they navigate that space, right? And
Yes.
actually leverage things that do optimize them and cause like no harm, or it's a very, calculated harm, right?
Well,
Like,
I think that is I mean, I love the way you're framing this, and I love how you talk about natural versus putting some effort in almost. Like we don't have to go to nature, but advertising has loved to use the word natural and from the earth and organic. And we have these lovely words that are, beautiful. And they've even filtered into how we think about the hormones in our body as if they're not all natural and what our body is already doing. So I think a big place to talk about this is hormone therapy, which somehow, interestingly, is such a polarizing idea. No matter what area we're in, people have strong feelings of it. And I would say nothing should be black or white. Nothing should be it's all good or it's all bad because that's not how science works. We're always readjusting our viewpoint. But the idea of natural really plays into this, and I hold with this because when we got told early in 2002 that hormones that we were giving women were terrible for them and were going to cause cancer and everyone was going to have a stroke or a blood clot from them, people flushed it. 80% of people overnight flushed those medicines down the toilet, and what came out of it, again, marketing, was the compounded hormones. Because then a whole market jumped up around the idea of we're going to give you what the natural thing is, not what this pharma company was feeding you, but the natural version. So the compounding hormone therapy really grew out of that idea of giving you something natural, which is that exact framing you're talking about. And so as we undid the damage of that, someone saying hormone therapy is bad, and we looked at the nuance and we really thought about the person we're giving it to, now we talk about it a very different way. But the industry of telling us compounding and natural was so good was so powerful. It is actually preventing people from getting the more optimal care, the more controlled and evidence based care they need because they're being sold the word natural, just like you're saying. So we have so much great data for hormone therapy now, knowing more about the age range, knowing that we have bioidentical, which is a word that got shoved into the compounding world. But bioidentical hormones we can give them that are FDA approved, that have gone through all three phases of clinical trials, that we know exactly what we're giving you, and it's not being made every single time. It's all section known, but people are still so focused on the word natural that they will choose to do something that doesn't have that control and regulation because it sounds and has been marketed so much better. And that's a hard thing to undo because what we give you in the clinic is covered by insurance. We're not making money off of it. We're not getting anything in our pockets for giving it to you. We're just trying to help you feel optimized and as your best self. But the compounding can actually advertise it in a different way that feels like they're doing more for you in a more controlled way, which is interesting.
Yes, power of marketing. It's a it's a world unto its own for sure. Language is so key, and as you said, how you're able to frame it, right? So if you're in that context of offering something that is FDA approved, there's very clear limitations on what you can say about that product, or what the pharmaceutical company can say about that
Mhm.
product, what it can and can't do. And it's a different sandbox when we head into that compounded world. Again, we were talking offline about the bodybuilding world, and when I listen to a lot of incidentally, I listen to a lot of bodybuilding podcasts because my husband just loves that stuff. And we both compete. And you know that these IFBB male pros that have $500,000 on the line if they win or lose the Olympia, if they have a choice between something that they're buying off the internet versus having a doctor who's giving them the good stuff, the FDA stuff,
Mhm.
they're going to get the FDA stuff because it's guaranteed delivery, risk factors, right? It's in a safe setting. They've got clear oversight. They've got regular blood work happening continually. Like they wouldn't go and order off of, whatever the online source is. They're going to go for what's safe and what's guaranteed because they're already increasing their risk factors by dabbling in this stuff. And yet here we have so many midlife women being misled about what it is they're taking. I know just because of my clients, when I say, okay, did the doctor explain the difference between compounded versus, the FDA approved? A lot of them are taking pellets, right? Like testosterone
Yes.
pellets. And they said, no, they didn't say anything. Like, okay, when's your blood work follow? Oh, I'm not getting any blood work done, for 6 months. And so this is what's actually really happening with women. They want help. They want to get optimized. They're being sold something and not being
Educated.
walked through. Yeah, they're not being actually given a true choice. But what's happened? Let's dive into placebos and supplements and the power of belief. You were talking a little bit about that offline because this is something that's important to you, I think.
Oh, very much so. Because I think that idea is we don't realize how, and I know you do because you work with women all the time, but people do not realize how powerful their brain is, how powerful what's happening in their body is actually connected to their brain. And so there's been multiple studies, and in the world I live in, it's hormone therapy studies and peroxidine studies where they looked at actually how much that placebo effect takes into account of how you will feel when you're doing these medications. So there was a study done not too, I think 2 or 3 years ago, where women didn't know if they were getting hormone therapy or they were getting a placebo. And 58% of women who received the placebo who thought they were getting hormone therapy, but like their symptoms improved. They felt better. And 77% of those women, even when they came off the medication, still felt better because their brain had actually believed they were getting a change and their symptoms remained off. So that's when we dive into what can we actually do with our brain that can treat our symptoms and how strong is it? And we know the neuroendocrine system, we can change our thermoneutrals range. So we know during perimenopause and menopause, our ability to feel hot or cold is a trigger rather than a longer set. So, you can go from 0 to sweating through your clothes in maybe 30 seconds flat. And that's your thermoregulatory region of your brain. Well, that region actually it expands how long it takes for you to have that hot flash because of your mental ability. So isn't that crazy? Like you can actually do that on your own with the power of your mind. Now, I wish we could harness that. I wish we could do it besides in these placebo
Without the
studies.
placebo, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
without having to think you're getting something or selling you something. How do we encourage women to mentally tap into what's there, but we know it's there? And so we know a lot of the times when people feel better on a supplement or a medication, it's likely the placebo effect. And it takes about 4 to 8 weeks for that optimal effect we found from the studies. And that's exactly, if you look at the packaging on most supplements, that's exactly how long it says. Wait about that long before you feel a symptom change, because they understand the placebo effect and they know they can benefit off of it. And so we also see it in there was a paroxetine study. So Brisdell is the only antidepressant that's been proven to help with hot flashes, and it does. But we found that 80% of the approval is placebo effect. There's still a 20% approval over placebo, but 80% of that is just the placebo effect we're feeling. So
I have a quick question. So is this self-assessed improvement? Like I'm feeling better, or are people hooked up to electrodes and it's registering changes in temperature?
this is self-assessed. So this is just someone filling out a
Ooh.
survey saying, "I feel better. Like my hot flushes are better. They're the things that we know of. My brain fog is better. My hot flushes are better. My sleep is better. The sleep architecture is better. I'm not waking up. I'm waking up and I'm feeling refreshed." Those things that we talk about in the clinic as markers or how we treat perimenopause symptoms, they are improved with the placebo effect, but no markers are put on them, and I think that'd be a really interesting study.
I think you'd again, I'm speaking as a coach,
Yeah.
and if my clients are listening to me, they know my nickname is the eyes of Zoran, because I see everything and I
Yeah.
keep meticulous records. So they'll self-report, oh, how's your nutrition? Oh, my nutrition's great. I'm an 8 out of 10. And then I sit this one gal, she's listening. She'll laugh. I said, I want you to look at the last 20 days of meal planning and get back to me. How many days did you actually hit your markers? And I know there's 2 days, right? But she had self-assessed that she's like, 8 out of 10. And so this self-assessment is also part of the
Mhm.
equation. I think that needs to get taken into account. It's why, metabolic wards are like the gold standard, where you really can
Yeah.
control what people are eating versus what they think that they're eating.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so we were talking about and I bring this up a lot. Bruce Mosley, he did a fascinating study back in 2002, where he took 180 osteoarthritic knee patients and they did a sham surgery on half of them. And what they found was that there was no difference in positive outcomes between the people that had this sham surgery. They went under, they woke up, that it looked like they'd had this surgery. There was band-aids, there were some stitches and all that jazz. And they actually, even 2 years later, they had the same measurable positive outcomes as the people that had the surgery, which is wild, right? Because it's so invasive. It's surgery. It's not something that you're putting in your mouth.
Mhm.
And so that's the power of whether it's a routine or a ritual you're doing, or something that you're ingesting and consuming, whether it's the group that you're around. But that is a very, very powerful thing. And we're not saying, and I want to underline this, we're not saying that there's not a very real place for pharmacological interventions in the menopause space. That's not, and because I hear this, sometimes I'm on Jen Gunter's feed and I'll just see some of the wild, that, she's been prescribing MHT for like decades and decades and wrote a book on it and all that jazz. But if you got to be careful, because people really are triggered and will misinterpret that, say that the power of the mind to create a positive outcome in the feeling of wellness is significant, but that doesn't mean that there's not a time and a place for medical intervention.
No, absolutely, because we
You want to talk
know,
about that?
yeah, we know like what the estrogen does to the receptors and where the receptors are. So thinking about, we're just talking about hormone therapy, even though we know the brain is so powerful and the placebo effect is there, we also know that for a long period, your menstrual time of your life, your estrogen receptors have been connecting to the receptors all over your body. not just your uterus and ovaries where people are thinking about it. There are so many estrogen receptors in your brain, in your GI system, and your bladder and your bowels. Like, you have receptors all over your body. So, of course, when there's changes to how much estrogen, perimenopause is going up, down, all around. I call it the stock market. So, and then later it's a little bit more flatlined, but we know there's going to be repercussion or feelings or changes when we change how much estrogen, even if it's a pulsing a lot of it or then suddenly a lack of it, your body will feel it. And I usually like to use the word buffering, especially thinking about the brain. People always talk about brain fog and that feeling of like it's almost in a gray zone. I like to refer to it as brain buffering because I think of it as this, like, your body is used to having the estrogen come at these receptors at a very routine pace. I mean, it's getting into a rhythm of things. And again, this is not everyone, because not every woman has the normal menstrual flow. We've got people with PMOS, we've got people with endometriosis, we've got people with just irregular cycles. We don't know why. So I'm not talking about everyone, but I am talking about the majority of women that have this routine flow. And then we hit perimenopause, and the estrogen isn't going to those receptors like they're used to. So the receptors are working harder, and they even actually multiply in multiple places in your brain because they're like, we need to suck this estrogen up for wherever we can. So there's more of us. Maybe we can grab whatever's there better.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like, you're in the areas where you upregulate receptors, that actually there's worse functioning. So there is data and evidence that we know that that when we change the estrogen, there are real symptoms that happen. And they're not, because we're not a one size fits all. It's not the same for every single woman who goes through this, but we're all having these changed because any woman that lives long enough is going through perimenopause and menopause. Unlike a lot of other stages in women's life, this is universal. So, exactly, even though we know the brain is powerful, we also know there is biology behind what's happening, and we have something that could help buffer it for people because we know the side effects too. Thinking about our bones, we have a hugely accelerated bone loss and lean muscle loss when we have this transition. That's not a thought process, that's evidence based. So when we think about those things, we know that there are big changes that we have to anticipate and work towards, and even thinking about moderating with menopause hormone therapy. And again, it's not been proven for everything, and we only have evidence in small areas, but where the evidence is strong, it is so strong. And as we fund more, and we learn more, I believe we will learn more areas that we can do benefit when we help with estrogen treatment if it's the right for you individually. Again, we are not one size fits all. Not every woman needs estrogen hormone therapy. Not every woman can have it, but you shouldn't take it off the table because you heard these horrible studies from over 20 years ago.
And with oftentimes with, let's call it, hormone stacks that are no longer being recommended, right? Like the
Yes.
orals and the dosages that are no longer necessary and all of that. It's really about critical thinking in the end. And I think as much as you can avoid getting sucked into that polarized space where it's black and white, all or nothing. I think if we could all just think critically and really advocate for ourselves, but also try to be as scientific in your own personal process. That's what I always try to suggest. Like, keep data. Don't go by memory. We can't even remember what we ate for breakfast yesterday. Like, write
Yes.
stuff down. And especially when we go into the space of compounded, or I was talking with your colleague Lee Bax about peptides in the previous podcast, really be in charge of your health. Don't guess around this stuff because there's no point in chasing longevity and optimization if you're treating yourself like a science experiment, but not doing your due diligence running that experiment. I just had a client say she's going to go and get food sensitivity testing. We're not going to talk about that, but this is the space again that women are in. They're searching for answers. They're general practitioners not able to help them. They're frustrated. Can you talk about the Dutch test? Because it keeps coming up as this boutique, laser focused kind of test. And with it, your doctor can create that personalized cocktail for you. What is it and what can it cannot do?
Well, and I was actually going to bring it up just because of what you said, where you said that using that cognitive, like really thinking through, because that's exactly what the Dutch test preys on. So Dutch test, it sounds fancy. We seem to love everything from the Dutch community, but it has nothing to do with that. It's actually D for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. So that's what Dutch stands for. And so what it is you're sent a $400 to $500 packet and you give 4 urine samples during the day at different time points. You ship it back and that's your lab work done. So what they're saying is that they're not only looking at hormone levels, they're looking at the metabolite, so how it breaks down in your urine. And that's what we're being sold as the benefit of this test and why it's being sold the way it is. Well, the testing may have some validity that it is similar to getting your hormone levels done, but the validity has only been done by the founder of the Dutch test. So we have to think of it that way. Like they haven't done independent testing to see how it compares next to lab work in other areas, but there is something there. But just because it may show similar levels of what's going on with your hormones as if you got your lab work done, first of all, you could get your lab work done on hormones without costing $400 to $500. And then B, the real question is, what are we doing with that information? So that critical thought process part of it is really the main issue behind it. Doing this test doesn't necessarily change anything we're going to do for you if we're using evidence-based therapy. So we are not chasing numbers. And this is one thing that's very hard. And I understand because we love numbers to calibrate our sleep, our fitness, our heart rate. And I love that we're always looking at numbers, but this is this weird space because of what we talked about. As we know, hormone levels are changing all over the place. So what your labs are doing may not mirror how you're feeling, and how you're feeling is what we're actually treating when we're thinking about taking care of someone in perimenopause. So having this hormone test that costs a lot of money, that may or may not be equivocal to the lab work that you can do in your clinic, all it's saying is that your hormones are changing, but how is it in any way helping us understand what to do next? And that's the point, is it's not. But it's a real easy segue for someone to sell you a stack of supplements or something else to do that seem to make sense in that field.
Yeah, it's just it's a tangled web that you get into, right? Again, and I think about my interview that I had with Jen Gunter years ago, and I asked her why she got into this space that she got into, and she said, "Well, because." And being an advocate for the truth, and she said, "Well, because her child had, I think it was a heart issue, and so she was up late at night, and this is even before the virtual world that we're in now, the digital world that we're in now, and she said she was in a rabbit hole, and it gets so confusing, and you're under a lot of stress and pressure to solve the problem, especially when someone else was involved. And she was really she became very aware in a lived way, in a visceral way almost, the vulnerability that you experience and how it's so easy for predatory marketing to get in there and start selling you stuff. And people have lost life savings doing various regimens that don't have any validity, aren't ethical, and they don't give them the outcome that they promise, which is tragic. The question is, like, are women buying clarity, right, with these kinds of tests, or are they buying this illusion that they have control over something? And are they even potentially getting ill-advised and not getting the actual treatment and the proper diagnoses that they should be getting?
Well, and these are often in areas where the person that ordered this test knows they want to down the road sell you a stack and something else down the road. So the hard part is it's usually like you said, a linked package. And it's exactly what you're saying. Women, like how she was, doing the research in the middle of the night, women are sleep deprived because of a lot of the perimenopausal symptoms. So they're looking, it's called WASO. It's wake after sleep
There's a
onset.
name?
It is a name.
Okay.
I mean, that's how common it is. It's the most common sleep complaint during perimenopause. And it's that 3 to 4 a.m. wake up. So they're exhausted, they're alone, they're Googling in the dark, they're asking Chat GPT what they can do, and someone has really good SEO, GEO, or whatever, and knows exactly where to hit them. And when you're sleep deprived, it's like being drunk. So it's like you're drunk buying things in the middle of the night. I mean, it doesn't feel correlated, but it is. Like when you're sleep deprived, it's your mental capacity isn't all the way there. So you are making these like deep dive intellectual research when your brain is going at like 40%. So, I mean, that's enough. And again, they know when you're looking, they know what time. I mean, the data.
Yeah, everything's so drilled down.
Yeah. So they probably have it like set up 3 a.m. We're going to start really selling this really expensive thing because that's when women are going to be the most like, I just need to sleep. I just need this to stop. Whatever I can do to make this stop, I will do it. And I get it. Like when you're sleep deprived, I mean, I've been through residency, work night calls 36 hours at a time. There's like, we always joke that we'll get an Amazon package 2 days later and be like, I had no idea what I bought post call, but I bought all these things. And that's just like a universal. When you're sleep deprived, it's easier to take those steps.
Yeah, it's again, it's that conversation that we started with, right? Like there is a problem that needs to be resolved, right? So
Yes.
for a woman going through the menopause transition and she has a symptom, a bothersome symptom coming up, there's a gap in medical training for a lot of doctors.
Yes.
Especially depending on what geographic region you're living in. There's a lot of misinformation, very targeted misinformation coming at you through these algorithms. Depending on your circle of friends, right? Then you've also got that coming at you. How do women navigate this? And how do we avoid this, your body's broken narrative? Because again, the power of the mind is real. And if we're buying into that narrative, we're taking a huge step backward for women's health and wellness.
That's actually, I'm writing an article right now on how much cognitive power we're losing because we've always put ourselves into a deprivation. Women have always been told that to look like you are professional, you have to look a certain way. And so a lot of women have always lived their life underfed with that background.
Reds, yeah.
Yeah, and when you're always like the hum in the background is, what can I eat? When can I eat? You're using your mental power in a different place. So again, it's not what we're talking about, but it's that idea is that we're told and we're given this idea that your body is broken and it's causing us to we're not allowed to, we're having to siphon off part of our thought process because we're always having to be thinking about what goes in, what we're eating and whatnot. So sorry, I know that's not where we're going, but it's just like I am in the middle of writing this article, and I was like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like I mean, personally, you think about like when you're 11 years old and you start learning about what body looked like, and of course, I was at the time frame when it was it was actually called heroin chic. That was the look.
The Gucci look.
Yes, and it's, certain models and they had
It's coming back.
and I have 11-year-old now and I'm like, that's not what I want in your brain, but the images are so powerful. And then we're sold to that. And instead of thinking through,
and that influences behavior. And that's the other thing, right? As a coach, it influences behavior. And I see it as a coach because your thoughts create not reality, but your thoughts create actions.
Yes.
Your actions create reality. And what you think you're experiencing isn't the same as what's actually happening because your body, I like to say, your body tells you what you're doing.
Yes.
Your body tells us if you're eating this or that or treating this way or that way, or if you're sleeping or not. It doesn't really lie. There's always nuance, right, in everything. But this broken body thing, that's really, I feel for people that don't have access to a great GP or aren't tapped into podcasts like yours, the Unbiased Science podcast, because they're getting pummeled relentlessly by this story that their bodies are broken. And so they're not even looking at the big levers truly and giving it, like really pulling on those levers, right?
Well, and there
And it's a
is.
shame.
And it's so hard because again, we have programmed to say we should look a certain way no matter what our age is. And there are things we can do to really make sure that we're as healthy as possible. But the word shouldn't be what our body looks like. It's how our body's health is and what we're doing on the inside. Because again, not one size fits all. We are all, even if we're like doing the optimal things, our bodies are not going to look exactly the same. And so there's no way for us all to look one way. So it's understanding what our healthy is, but then we hit that and we maybe finally hit the point of our life where we're like, I have a little bit more self-acceptance. And then perimenopause hits and we do have weight shifts that are expected and part of the process, but it feels like you're being defeated by your body again. So when we finally have acceptance, we maybe have figured out what it is that works for us. And then, unbeknownst to you, so when your estrogen levels start to change, there are actually three different estrogens that our body makes. Estradiol is a big one from our ovaries. Estrione is the one that lives more in our fat cells. So, as the estradiol decreases, our estrione becomes our more predominant. And so, it's not as good at doing the things and going to the receptors as our estradiol is. So it starts to ramp up estrone because it lives in the fat cells. So, and it likes to be around our visceral fat, so around our organs. So not only does it not look the way we want to look, it actually can do health disservice to us. So as our estrogen goes up, we go from having our fat distributions in our hips and our thighs, and it becomes more central, which is always the question I got in the office. They're like, all of a sudden, I feel like in 1 month, I went from my jeans fitting to having the muffin top. And I know you must have gotten this all the time, especially people that are very good and know their nutritional needs. It's still going to happen to them because it's the change in your estradiol. And that's hard. And that's emotionally hard too, because you think you're doing everything and right. And then all of a sudden your body feels like it's betraying you. And so then that narrative of your body broken feels so much truer to you. And you feel like,
It's my experience is a little bit different actually. I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but because I see the data, we do waist, hip, and thigh measurements. And I've got clients I've been tracking for 9 years. Um, I see this on a recent Instagram post. I don't see any changes in
real.
fat patterning.
Yeah.
Yeah, zero, none.
Well, and
Yeah.
this might be also because,
So this is where the levers, right? Like the levers that you're pulling, are you pulling them and what you think you're doing,
yeah.
right? So another thing that I'll say is like I go to the gym, I don't see young girls training properly. So when I hear, or eating properly, I had a client has a daughter that's in full ride scholarship in university, and they're asking me for nutritional advice. So I also know coaching hasn't really changed
Mhm.
for girls, right? They don't have really great education around that space, and
Yeah.
so here you have a perfect example where again thoughts create reality. I walk into the gym, I don't see these people training properly. They're young, but I hear from women coming on social media saying, I do the same thing that I did when I was younger. Me as a performance coach, I'm like, yeah, but I don't see any of these young kids training right. I doubt you were training right 20 years ago when we were even more behind the times. So there's this cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing. And when you go into a program like mine, guess what? Right? We drill down. I have systems, right, where we drill down and teach you how to actually, I call it run your rig. And then people are like, oh my God, everyone should be doing this. And I'm like, I always say, I'm not doing anything secret. This is bodybuilding stuff. It's boring. It works. It works at a high performance level. It works for a gal that just wants to get her mojo back. It's basics, the big levers,
Yeah.
right?
And that is a big factor. Like the people that are working with you are very in tune. They're making the proactive choices. And that is truly one of my biggest thing. Preventative care is a very unsexy part of medicine, but it is what will give us longevity. It is what will give us quality of life, not just quantity of life. If we do stuff right on the front end, which is what you're preaching and what you're taking care of people with. You're teaching them the things that will help them age well. And exactly right. If you are resistant training and doing it consistently like we're supposed to in your 20s and 30s, you likely will have a different transition than someone that just starts picking up after, when it starts to become a big, buzzword in your 40s and 50s. They're having to catch back up with what you hope would already be happening beforehand. And that's a big part too. And we know that the perimenopause menopause age is the least likely to be physically active. 7.2% are meeting the baseline for physical activity.
Although I think it was in January. Did you see that in the news? I think it was like the CEO of like Crunch Fitness or one of the big chains,
Mhm.
and they were saying they were having this just a spike in female memberships, and the request was they were having to clear out all this cardio equipment and buy resistance training equipment for their women because that's what they were asking for. So that's interesting,
Well,
right? At the consumer level, that's happening.
I love that, but I also want it to happen a little bit earlier. Like, we
Sure.
shouldn't wait until
Wait.
and we are like, we're hearing resistance only when we're perimenopausal, menopausal, like the words about bone health and muscle mass and all those things. It's not like magically they only matter then. They matter earlier, and your body will change differently if you do it earlier. That's the preventative
Which is
care side of it. And I think
which is exactly the danger of the skinny is back in because the young girls, we now know, we didn't know, I didn't know, I'm a Gen Xer,
yeah.
when I was young, that what I was doing was eroding my bone health.
Yes.
I was bulimic for 16 years. I didn't know that starving myself and not eating enough protein and not, doing resistance training was actually doing harm to my bone health. And we're seeing these now we know that now as women, mothers, grandma, we know that. We cannot do that in our youth. And so we really have to look at what's happening with this skinny heroin chick through that lens of doing ourselves harm, almost like, foot binding or wearing the brace
Yes.
around your neck it's like this, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, and I mean, and we go through patterns of what's considered quote unquote beautiful. I mean, there was an era where being curvier was considered beautiful not too long ago. So it's like, which our body isn't meant to chase all these trends. We're meant to be healthy, and we're meant to be the healthy our body is. And yes, exactly. Like, again, I've got a young daughter, and I know what's out there on the internet. And even if you're restricting social media and whatnot, they're going to see things. Their friends are going to show them things. So how can we make that message big younger, so we're not, we are, I talk about this all the time, just like what you said, what you do to yourself in your 20s, your 30s is turning you into that sweet little old lady that's bit in half, that if she steps off a curve breaks her hip. Like, that is
Frailty.
yeah,
Yeah.
the sarcopenia, it's the response to what we did earlier on. So if we can do more on the front end to be healthy, look what it can do. I mean, we see the women that are 90 years old running marathons, and that is humanly possible.
Maybe we need to change it from skinny chick to frailty chick. Maybe,
Oh,
our
yeah.
word choice is very powerful, right?
Yes.
And skinny still has those vestiges of cool, but frailty, I don't know,
Yeah,
right?
I like that. Like, and
Frailty?
all the ocean, like the advertisement that shows all these very lean women, and just put the word frailty on it instead of the skinny verbiage we're used to, and just
Mhm.
see other places. I love that little like PSA out there, ad campaign for
Yeah.
people. I love it.
And I'm lean. Again, I'm a performance coach. I'm lean, but my muscle mass
Mhm.
to body fat ratio, my strength, it to body mass to my mass is not frail, it's anti-frail. And so these are also things, as from the performance lens, I think that the female body is incredible. And when you run your right, you can age truly powerfully, not just like a slogan on a t-shirt, age powerfully, but hey, this is midlife, this is it. I'm like, heck no, I've got tons of clients showing you that it's about your actions, your daily actions. And women aren't that different than men. We're
No,
not.
no.
We have more similarities to men than we have to mice, number one.
Thank
And
you.
right.
Which is why
And
human data
we can be
matters.
strong. That
Yes.
human data matters.
Yes, but exactly that. I love that, and I think that that's the thing So many women are scared of in their 20s and 30s because they've been told bulky. These, again, words matter. Bulky, and they're going to get large, and they have these like preconceived notions of what weightlifting will do for their body. So they just avoid it. And I mean, I'm sure we've all gone through that space where we've told ourselves that if we lift too much heavy of weight, we're going to get bulky. And the data's just not there to show that, women will get bulky with weightlifting. And I think that's a very interesting thing. We just have to undo the verbal gymnastics we've done to get here that's playing in our minds all the time. And I always think it's so funny. It like they always talk about women say have so many more words a day than men. But I think it's because we've had to filter so much more into our brain. Like we're always having conversations, around food, around weights, around like what's the house plan for the day. Like our brains are going a million miles an hour. So of course we have more words every day than men because we're required to have so much more playing underlying all the time.
Fascinating. I think with all that cognitive gymnastics that we would be aging really powerfully from a brain health perspective. I get it. Let's wrap up with one last thing from you. Is there something that really excites you that you see coming on the horizon in the healthcare space for women?
More research is actually starting to happen.
Is there more money pouring into to women's research
Well, right
from like
now,
from reputable sources?
right now there was a bill that was kind of shelved back in 2024 for menopause research, menopause health. It's back on the table, which is exciting, and it didn't take a lot of pressure to get it back on the table, which felt really good. And it's bipartisan, so it's being because that's what I love about women's health. It shouldn't be partisan. Uh, no matter what party you're in, women are there. Doesn't matter, women are there. So if we can just remind people that we're all women and we're all there, something as non-political as like, women age and we need really better healthcare shouldn't be something that one party can say is good or bad because we're all there.
How much money are we talking about?
Not
Is it
it's like right now I think it's 24 billion, which is a drop in the bucket compared to other things, but at least it's segued just for that. And so that makes me excited.
billion? You
Billion.
said a B bill?
B.
That's a significant amount of
But
money.
sadly, in the government world, that's not a lot, but I'll take it. I'll take it. But there's not really.
Hopefully, it'll help with endometriosis.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's so behind the times.
oh, yes. And I think the idea that there's so many more groups popping up to talk about, and I mean, just like I feel like there's been a lot more push to help. Well, and maybe this is just because it's so important to me. I feel like there's been more push to educate as we go younger, like changing polycystic ovarian syndrome to polyendocrine metabolic, like things like that, like helping us see these syndromes and not have words and names that blame us for them being there are important first steps because there's been a lot of damage done by the way we name things in medicine. I mean, going back to calling everything that happened in our brain hysteria, like how hurtful do those words feel? And how much has it kept us from progressing? So, the more we rename, the more we talk about things, and I really do feel like we're starting to stand up more, and women are starting to say, which is why this industry is so big. They're starting to say, enough, I need help, and I'm not going to let you tell me everything's fine, and I'm just going to go home and bear and handle it, which I think is very important. And and I'm in a lot of advocacy groups, and I see that there's a big push to help medical schools educate doctors, and that excites me because if if the system doesn't tell you it's important, we are cramming information through the whole bodies down our throat to medical school. But if the system says it's not important, we have no extra
Mm.
brain space for things. It's not like we are just choosing not to learn. I call it the water hose at us. They're just a hose of information and we're just trying our best. So if it's shown as important, then doctors will take it as important. So if we put it in the curriculum and don't make them have to find it on their own, that is going to do leaps and bounds for how your doctor can care for you and keep you from feeling like my doctor didn't know, my doctor didn't care, because I hear that all the time. It's not that they
Mhm.
don't care, They have not been given the tools, which is unfair to everyone. And so that excites me.
Beautiful. I'm interested to follow that space because again, I'm about performance for women and I'm always looking for different ways to help them, resources to send them to. I believe that women can age incredibly powerfully and that midlife is a place to dive in. You've got the time and the resources to pour into yourself. And I think more women are championing that, right? We're having more female role models, my mother included, that are
Oh
out there
my
showing
gosh.
what's possible at
Love
any
it.
age. And I'm excited. I think the this space, as long as we use it intelligently, these podcasts and Substacks and all of that, we can collectively. It's great to see more experts getting on there, like Susan Davies and yourself and Lee Backs, like getting on there and sharing the real evidence based information for people to help women get out of that vulnerable space and start truly being able to advocate for themselves and think critically.
Well, it's even why I named people are like, "What does Selfority?" That doesn't mean anything to them, but really, it's just a way to always say out loud, it's named for female health prioritized, so your self priority, and I think I just wanna say that out
I
loud
love it.
for myself and for others, that I always say women are very good about making lists of things that are important and not putting themselves on it. So if we can just get ourselves on the list, and that's why I say there's nothing wrong. And again, why the industry came up, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do well for yourself, and you deserve it, and you should be a priority. But that's where we have to bring the evidence in. So you do the best thing for yourself when you have the ability to look inward. And so self priority.
Yeah. Advocate for yourself, and not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. So you've really got to do your due diligence and ask for information. And if people are playing a clean game, they're going to give you the information, right? They're going to send you to the research or tell you the risk factors or truly empower you through education to help you make the right choice.
When anyone ever tells you there's a one thing you can do that will fix everyone, I would say like red blaring light should be going off, because there is never a universal, like someone on the Instagram cannot tell you how you're going to fix yourself if they've never talked to you.
Yeah, but
So,
ChatGPT is telling me to say that so I can beat the algorithm.
yes, I know. And it is.
Nuance.
And it's
Yeah.
like clickbait, and clickbait works, but that's the hard thing is like I call it very unsexy to have science, but unsexy works. That's why it's been around so long.
Yeah.
So
The
the
basics. Yeah.
basics.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And I'm going to make sure I send everyone in the show notes over to your podcast. And I'm looking forward to listening to all of the episodes. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with the audience. And we'll catch up. We'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for including me with all your fun friends that come on and listen every time.